YouTube, how's it going? Ghost Squad, how y'all doing today? Because today I'm going to be jumping into part 5 of extreme revenge stories that went too far. Extreme revenge stories that has gone too far. Part 4, there was a few that probably would have been extreme. But now, we'll be jumping into part 5. We're jumping into part 5, y'all. Let's enjoy more of BMAs.
Ah, revenge. There's nothing like the feeling of getting your own back. More
Woo!
Stories of terrible
New
people
video.
who got their just desserts.
Yeah!
However, some people have taken their revenge plots way too far.
Really now?
But in a way I just can't get enough of. From cheaters who had their lives completely ruined to immortalizing the deed with tattoos, here are even more stories of people who conducted some nuclear-level revenge.
I wouldn't say nuclear level. I would just say, again, average to above average.
On a high. Now, in the last few videos of this series, I asked you guys to send me in your own revenge stories, and boy, did you guys have a lot of stories. And while they were all pretty good, a few were on another level, like this one that came from Tracy in the UK. Her husband, Gary, is employed at a local steelworks, and one of his workmates, who we'll call Derek, enjoyed playing pranks. Like, really enjoyed.
Like you mother!
He'd super glue cups to tables, put hot sauce or salt in people's drinks while they weren't looking, fill their safety boots with mud.
Whoa!
Juvenile stuff. But then one day, he lined the inside of Gary's safety helmet with glue. So when he went to take it off, he couldn't. Eventually, Gary ended up having to cut his hair to get the helmet off, leaving him with no option but to shave the rest of his head. That was the last straw.
Nah.
Gary thought long and hard about how to get Derek back, but there were only two things Derek really loved: pulling pranks and his motorbike. He loved that motorbike so much, it was his pride and joy, and he rode it to work every single day.
Okay.
And that's when Gary came up with an ingenious scheme.
Yeah.
Friday, he approached one of the site's crane operators, another man who's all too familiar with Derek's pranks.
Oh boy.
And asked him for a favor.
I need your help with something.
Use the crane to pick up Derek's bike and leave it on top of their building? The crane operator happily agreed to, no questions asked. When the end of the day came around, the crane operators made a swift exit before Derek came out to the parking lot and saw his precious bike had vanished.
Oh!
At first he thought it had
Where'd
been
it go?
stolen, and it was only when he saw his workmates pointing and laughing at the bike on the roof that he figured out what had happened.
Yeah.
But because all the crane operators had already left, there was no way to get it down.
Yep,
and
see
he
you
had to
tomorrow.
spend the entire weekend without his precious motorbike, picking up expensive taxi fares to get around. When he came in the following Monday, he was fuming, petulantly demanding someone get it down and pay for all his taxi fares. But unimpressed by his antics, the crane operators refused and left it up there.
Yep.
He begged them,
Please!
pleaded with them.
Please!
But
I need!
But when it's eventually brought down, I don't imagine Derek will be keen to start pranking again.
Mm-hmm. That's what you get. That's what you get. All them pranks, they're gonna come with some type of consequence. Like, people ain't got time for that. When people go to work, they work. The only time you pull pranks is when you're at school, maybe at your friend's house or something. But when you go to work, you work. It's already stressful enough as it is at the job. But seeing someone pulling pranks and making your day even rougher, even tougher, even more stressful, you're going to do something about it. Either I'm going to, bush upside the head with a construction helmet, or I'm going to do something passive to where it doesn't include violence. And that was a passive, aggressive way. So you do that again, and you're going to have to climb up that Spider-Man and go get your bike. But that right there, that was a good way to say either stop or this will continue.
Don't I do it? In Western weddings, traditionally, the father of the bride pays for everything. However, the father of the bride in this next story, sent in to me by a viewer called Paul, paid for more than he ever bargained for. Paul's ex-army buddy, who I'll call Pete, was about to be married, mainly because his would-be father-in-law had obsessively pestered him about making an honest woman of his daughter. Pete's fiancée, Rebecca, had some expensive wedding plans, and her father was happy to pay for it all. However, during her bachelorette party, Rebecca drunkenly admitted to her friends that she'd cheated on Pete, and not just once, but more times than she could remember.
Whoa!
News of this eventually reached Paul, and like a good friend, he immediately told Pete what he'd heard. He was expecting Pete to have a major reaction to this, but he started laughing. It turned out Pete had suspected Rebecca of being unfaithful for a while, and had hired a private investigator to follow her.
Oh.
The truth, he assured Paul, would all come out in good time.
Like, give it
The wedding
time.
eventually
I
rolled
got
around,
this.
and the bride and groom were placing rings on each other's fingers, but when Rebecca said, "I do," Pete replied, "I don't." He then turned to the hundreds of guests and asked them all to look under their seats.
Oh.
There, they all found packets containing
But
photos
some
of
Oprah
Rebecca
Winfrey?
smooching other men. While everyone was gasping and shouting at Rebecca, Pete and his groomsmen, who were all in on the plot, grabbed several bottles of champagne from the bar
party
and
time.
slid down. With military precision, they made a beeline for Pete's family home, quickly removing all of Rebecca's possessions and dumping them in the yard before changing the locks.
Right,
But
my
I guess he
man.
technically did make an honest woman of her, in that he showed everyone she was honestly a cheater.
Yeah.
Do you have a revenge story which you think can top that? Well, you can send it to me at revenge@beamazed.com. You might
Wow.
make it into the next part of the series.
The next
All right,
level
what's
of
next?
embarrassment. The next level of embarrassment. That right there, that was pretty doggone good, if I had to be honest. Cause he legit did a Oprah Winfrey. Check under your chairs. Hey, you get a photo. You get a photo. Everybody gets a photo of her making out with random dudes. She's a party chick. And now you want to get married? Now, maybe if she would have told him, but she did it in a drunk way. She was drunk and she confessed. She was drunk. And that's the thing, when you're drunk, the truth comes out like water. It comes out. But she let them know. Oh, I cheated on him with multiple men. And the thing about what I like about this guy is that he took it like a champ. Normally, a person would be outraged, head turning red like a tomato, and just using every type of syllable in the vocabulary against him. But no, took it like a champ, and he handled it. He handled it. By the party like gods, man. That's all I can say.
Deep water. Landlords.
Deep water.
Some are good, some are bad, and some are just plain evil. But if you've ever had to live under a bad landlord, a story from 14 years ago belonging to a now deleted Reddit user, who I'll call Angela, might make all that rent money feel well spent. Back in the day, Angela rented a flat which was owned by a cheapskate landlord. He'd skimp on repairs, paint over mold, raise rents whenever he could. Typical scumbag species of landlord.
Yeah.
After raising the rent for the third time in a single year,
Third time in a
decided to
year?
move out. On the last day of her lease, she'd cleaned up and removed the last of her belongings by 1 p.m. However, the landlord had told her to be out of the apartment by noon and used this as grounds to keep her entire security deposit, some $1,200.
No.
Angela was seething, but instead of fighting,
Like,
about
I'm gonna
it,
get
she
you.
decided
I'm gonna
to
get you.
bide her time. 6 months later, in the dead of night, Angela dropped by her old apartment building. Without anyone around, she located an outdoor faucet that she'd seen a few times on a set of stairs leading to the building's basement, and turned it on. Water began pouring down the steps and into the basement, a room that was off limits to residents as the landlord claimed he was using it for his own personal storage.
Right.
Namely for electronics and
Oh,
supplies
all
for another
those
business he
electronics
ran.
going for a
Then
swim.
Angela simply walked off. She moseyed past the building a few days later and noticed that the faucet was still on, a deep pool of water now swamping the door. Clearly, the landlord hadn't been around in a while because his basement storage room was completely flooded. Undoubtedly,
Ruined!
including
No!
tens of thousands of dollars worth of electronics he had stored down there.
10,000.
I wonder if he skimped out on those repairs.
$10,000 of repairs.
Let it go.
Let it
They say
go.
revenge is a dish
Let
best
it go.
served cold, but I'd argue it's best
I'm sure
served
he'll let it go.
frozen.
All of them.
If Reddit user A Quiet Borderline's uncle's
A
story
Frozen
is
movie
anything to go
reference.
by. Uncle Dale was a senior engineer at a small firm in the U.S. And while not in his job description, he was also the one who organized the office parties. He left a tin box with a slit
Girl
in the
doing the
top
whole
outside
moonwalk.
of his office, which
Someone's
would
having
leave
fun.
money in to donate to the firm's party fund. He'd seen plenty of coworkers popping bills into it, but when he checked the box one month, it was empty. Someone had stolen the donations.
Wow,
But
stealing
this
from a
engineer
donation
preferred
box.
to solve problems rather than just report them. So he came up with a plan. He secretly rigged the box up to a hidden doorbell camera, then loudly announced someone had been kind enough to donate $100 to the party fund. A few minutes later, the doorbell camera app pinged on his phone. The footage showed Brad, the owner's nephew who had also worked at the firm, sneaking up to the box and opening it before realizing there was nothing inside it.
The owner's
and guiltily
nephew.
slinking away. Dale could have sent the incriminating footage to the
Wow,
owner, but no.
busted you.
Dave knew the footage didn't actually prove anything, and he wanted to teach this Nepo baby a lesson he'd never forget.
Right.
So, Dale asked some of the firm's engineering students to create a box that, when opened, would play the loudest, most obnoxious noise possible. They quickly put together a box that not only blared the popular Disney song Let It Go from the film Frozen at full volume when opened, but they also made sure it wouldn't stop until the lid was closed, and you could only do that by hitting a hidden switch at the back. Dale then proudly glued the box down to the table
this is
with
good.
industrial strength glue, shut the lid, and then loudly announced that someone had kindly donated $50 before walking
Free
away.
money!
A short while later, the deafening tune from Frozen suddenly blared
Let
through
it
the
go!
office, and
Let
people
it
gathered
go!
Everyone, including Brad's uncle, came to look and watch as Brad was desperately trying to close the box lid, but to no avail. The thief had been caught red-handed and in full view of the boss.
I mean, let
A
it
few
go.
minutes later, Brad had
The
packed up
metal
all his
version.
things and been kicked out of the office. His uncle had also left a note in his file stating, "Do not rehire, do not recommend." So, just like that, this
Blacklisted.
Nepo baby's easy career path, along with any hopes he'd ever become an engineer, were over. If only he'd let it go.
If only.
The early bird.
Bro, that was,
In my opinion,
hey,
the worst kind
that
of
was a
thieves
above
are
average
food
one.
thieves.
I liked it,
Luckily,
that
another
one.
person who wrote in, called Verika, enacted revenge on a food thief that was so vile, she made sure they'd never touch her snacks again.
Okay.
Back when Verika was a student, she shared accommodation with another
Eureka,
student called
Verika.
Sophie, who, it turned out, didn't understand
Sophie?
basic manners.
Okay.
Verika had spent an afternoon baking cookies, but as they were cooling, Sophie snaffled the entire tray and went to eat them in her room. When Verika only found crumbs were left, she was
Crumbs.
furious. And annoyingly, this would happen often, with most of Verika's baking ending up being sneakily gobbled down by her greedy roommate. Verika told her to stop, but Sophie repeatedly ignored her. So, Verika decided to do something she wouldn't be able to
I got
ignore.
you.
She made another batch of cookies, only this time, she added huge fistfuls of dried mealworms into the dough. Oh, gross. Doubly gross for Sophie, though, because she was a strict vegetarian.
Strict
Verika
vegetarian,
then
huh?
baked them and, as per usual, left them out to cool. And right on cue, Sophie came in, snatched up the whole plate, and disappeared into her room. It was only when she was down to the last few cookies that Verika marched into her room and told her she'd actually eaten close to a half a pound of mealworms.
Yummy.
Sophie's face dropped, and she started screaming. She went to the bathroom, and all Verika heard for the next few hours were the sounds of retching and heaving. Eventually, Sophie emerged, and her entire face
Hey,
was
you,
bloodshot
how
from
you
puking so
doing?
hard. Verika's baked goods never went missing after that.
Mm-hmm.
Spider hider.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That is, I would say I wouldn't say revenge. I would say well deserved story. Well deserved story. You are eating my stuff, and you're telling me you're gonna continue to eat my stuff? Like, no remorse at all, no conscience of I make this stuff, and imagine you making a business to where you're a homemade chef, you're making food, you're trying to sell it, make some money, and out of nowhere your teammate or roommate, whatever, is eating your product that you're trying to sell to make some quick bucks, and that person is straight up no remorse about it. So okay, I got something for that. I got something for that. Just wait right there. Made some cookies that had some worms in it. Imagine the protein in there. Woo! I'm sure you probably lost about maybe 5-6 pounds.
Alright, if there are any arachnophobes out there, I suggest you skip ahead to the next story, because this one that was sent in from Wild Bill will send shivers up your spine.
Arachnophobias.
20 years ago, when Bill was just 10, his older sister spilled a glass of milk all over a carpet in their house, and then blamed Bill for it.
What?
Despite his protests, Bill was punished by his mom, and then all the family put the incident behind them. All of them except Bill.
Oh, Bill.
One day, he was at the local arcade, and after winning a whole bunch of tickets, he saw in exchange for a single ticket, he could get a cheap plastic spider toy. Suddenly, a brilliant revenge plot came to mind. For 2 weeks, he visited the arcade and traded all his tickets for as many fake spiders as possible. By the end, he had hundreds of the things and began hiding them all over his house. This sounds pretty harmless, but both Bill's sister and mother were severe arachnophobes. Not just a bit scared of spiders, but mortally afraid. So whenever either of them found one of the plastic arachnids, they'd scream and shriek like there was no tomorrow. Bill's reign of terror continued for several weeks. And he hid these things everywhere, in their beds, in their clothes, their food cupboards. After a few weeks, his sister got used to the pranks, merely calling her brother stupid whenever she found another one.
I mean, for several
He
weeks.
enacted the final part of this plan. The entire time he'd been pranking his mom and sister, he'd secretly been catching a whole bunch of real spiders. He kept them in a jar. And now it was time to release them. All over his sister's bed. After the jar was empty, he went downstairs, turned on the TV, and waited. He heard his sister walk into her room, and it wasn't long before she yelled down, "God, you're so immature." Bill could only assume that what happened next was she went to remove the spiders on her bed, thinking they were plastic, when she suddenly realized they were all real. Her mom ran upstairs thinking
What are you screaming about?
Moments later,
she realized, wait a minute, they moving! Get out of my way! Jump out the window! Whoosh!
Sweet time removing the remaining spiders from the bed.
Dang.
Once they were all gone, it's easy to imagine how paranoid his sister must have been every time she climbed into that bed.
Oh, I can
All that
imagine.
over some spilled milk.
Bro.
Too far.
Whoa. Okay. That I would say that is extreme. That is extreme. Clearly, that is extreme. You made it to where I had toy spiders, no harm, no foul, right? They're toy spiders, you see them. Yeah, sure you freak out because people who have arachnophobia, yes, I totally understand that. But it got to where the moment you realize these are fake, you're so immature, you dork. Okay, I got you on that. Man, now I made it to where you see spiders on the bed, and you're thinking, okay, after several weeks, these are all plastic. But the moment you see them moving, oh man, gonna jump out the nearest window I see. I promise you. Oh my God, can you imagine? And I mean, like, for those who probably don't have arachnophobia, I'm sure you probably have arachnophobia. I probably may have arachnophobia myself, because if I see a spider that is the size of my fist in my room, I promise you right now, this whole house would have been burnt down. You know how it is. You see a spider, you go get something to kill it, and it disappeared. Oh, nah. I'm moving to Mars.
Now, I love a good prank, but the pranks couples can play on each other are elite. Playing a prank on your partner is funny for reasons I just cannot explain. For example, one woman in the UK pranked her partner in 2019 by giving him a bad haircut.
Oh, wow.
They both found it funny as they'd been pranking each other like this for over 20 years. And it grew back in a couple of weeks, so no harm, no foul.
Right.
However, her partner really wanted to get his own back.
Okay.
Not by cutting her hair or doing anything to her at all. No. Instead, he decided to get a picture of her. Not a nice one, an unflattering one where she was asleep. Okay, pretty funny, but he
See
wasn't
my
done
man?
yet. Oh,
Just,
no.
yeah!
He got that unflattering picture tattooed on himself, really bringing out all the,
Oh
details.
my god.
Okay, now that is commitment to the venge.
Wow.
At first, his wife was absolutely furious, but eventually came around to see the funny side of it. Man, how do you reckon she's going to top that? Let me know down in the comments. Wait.
I can see, okay, that's kind of close to extreme because you put bro, look, made it look like she got 3 chins, and you see my man like, yeah, yo, nah, I can see she can top that. Maybe she put, I don't know, a penis, you know, on there or something. I don't know, something like maybe like you know those markers that you can't remove. You just put the word penis on there or something, and there you go. You know, I heart penis. There you go. Boom. You know what I mean? You gave me a tattoo. I gave you a marker that you can't wash off. There you go. Now we're even.
A tattoo far.
Way
Getting
tattoo
a
far.
tattoo as a form of revenge is a hilarious, albeit permanent, way to go about it. But sometimes it really gets the message across, as TikTok user Modern Day Angel knows all too well.
Look at all them
Being
tattoos.
covered head to toe in tattoos,
Look
he
at that.
occasionally attract
Look like it's all
mean
scribble
comments from
scrabble.
other TikTok users, like this particularly nasty one from a user called Max. But
Max.
we all know the golden rule. On the internet, never feed the trolls. At first, Modern Day Angel
let 'em
looked like he
starve.
was going to let it slide.
To
However,
death.
Max had left his Facebook account linked to his TikTok, and Modern Day Angel found a post Max had written dedicated to the passing of his father. So, Modern Day Angel did what any rational man seeking revenge on a silly little troll would do. He got the picture of Max's dad tattooed on his thigh next to the Grim Reaper. That is a level of disrespect I didn't even know existed. Guess Max's dad is with the Angels now.
Wow.
Modern Day Angel, at least.
Hey,
Revenge fail.
you deserve it.
Now, I usually cover
I
stories
bet you
of
learn
nuclear
next time.
revenge that succeed. But I want to talk about one which backfired so badly it made major news headlines all over the world.
Okay.
David and Ina Steiner, a couple who live in the U.S. state of Massachusetts, own a blog called E-Commerce Bites and regularly publish articles on e-commerce news. Back in 2019, Ina published a story on the blog covering a lawsuit being brought against the auction site eBay, criticizing the company heavily. Now you'd think eBay, being a major corporation, would barely take notice of one relatively small blog, but it did. So much so that eBay's CEO at the time, yes, the actual CEO of a $22 billion company, David Wenig, instructed his staff to take the Steiners down. Soon, the Steiners began receiving things they'd never ordered, and not nice things. There was a funeral wreath, a book on how to deal with the loss of a spouse, a grisly pig mask, $70 worth of weird pizza,
What?
and even live spiders and cockroaches.
Whoa.
But that wasn't all.
Whoa.
The eBay executives bombarded the couple with hate from fake social media accounts,
Oh,
sent
wow.
them threats, and even physically stalked them, going as far as trying to plant GPS trackers on their car. Well, this is revenge overkill even by my standards. Now, what were they expecting to happen? Well, it turns out this was all part of what the executives called a white knight strategy. When the Steiners eventually contacted eBay about all the hate they were receiving in relation to their coverage of eBay, eBay responded that they'd officially helped the couple tackle these crazy stalkers, manipulating them into running good coverage of eBay, even though they were the ones harassing them.
Right.
So, what was their undoing? The pizza. Yeah, believe it or not, after police began investigating this cyber stalking, they discovered a gift card was used to pay for the pizzas, which had been bought in Silicon Valley, just a few miles from the eBay headquarters. A rental car also spotted following the couple had a license plate that was tracked back to the same area. It was at this point that the police got the FBI and eBay's own lawyers involved, which the executives hadn't expected. They matched all the fake social media accounts, threatening parcel deliveries, and stalking to some of eBay's safety and security unit. Oh, the irony, because none of them had been smart enough to think that it would ever actually be traced back to them. By November 2022, 7 employees were sentenced collectively to more than 100 months of prison time for their roles in this crazy plot.
100 months?
However, CEO David Winnig
I
stepped
thought it
down
was
as
at least 100
CEO
years.
in September 2019 and was not charged. So remember, kids, if you're gonna try and enact a complicated revenge plot, just make sure you have a bunch of minions take the fall.
Yeah, not the executives.
Pins and needles. While some acts of revenge
above
take
average.
time and
Above.
patience to plan out, spur-of-the-moment revenge can be just as effective,
Oh.
as Reddit user Rotten Mongrel, who I'll call Mike, once proved. When Mike was in grade school, he usually kept a bag of chips in the side pocket of his backpack.
Okay.
The only problem was another kid, who I'll call Dave,
Dave.
noticed this, and Dave was a major douchebag.
Yuck.
He would quietly walk over and punch Mike right where his chip pocket was, destroying the chips and bursting the bag, leaving a mess for Mike to clean up.
No.
For 5 days in a row, Dave
5
did
days?
this any chance he got, and Mike was powerless to stop him. Or at least, until he got a wicked idea.
Here we
He
go.
turned up to school the following week, and right on cue,
Yeah, come on.
Dave punched the backpack pocket as hard as he could. But when his fist hit the bag, he suddenly jumped backwards, screaming in agony. His hand was mangled, and he was rushed to the nurse's office. It turned out Mike had emptied the chips from the pocket and replaced them with sewing needles.
Ooh.
Man,
That explains the
sadistic.
thumbnail.
Realizing he'd get in trouble for hitting a fellow student, Dave didn't tell anyone what had really happened.
Yeah.
He stayed away from Mike from then
Yeah,
on.
you see that?
Finally,
Remember that?
Dave could eat his chips in peace.
Made your hand look like a
And all it
porcupine.
took was some light mutilation.
Like you high-fived a cactus.
Shrimply the best.
Yeah, not even
I've never
extreme.
been cheated on.
Kind
Trust me,
above
it
average.
sucks.
Above average.
But it's also why this story of revenge from a now deleted Reddit user makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Back in 2022, this woman, who we'll call Beth, was living happily with her boyfriend, who we'll call John, of
John?
4 years in an apartment he owned in London in the UK. She'd been studying really hard to get her master's degree, and for a few months, she'd been spending every waking moment on her thesis. So initially, she didn't notice when John would come home later than expected or began spending more time out of the apartment. Then one day, after she'd finally finished, she decided to book them both a little vacation as a treat.
Let me guess.
She logged onto her
He's
account
cheating
for a
on her.
hotel chain she regularly used, and suddenly noticed there were several bookings for a hotel in London that she hadn't made. One of which was booked for that very day. She quickly rang up the concierge and asked what was going on. Confused, they informed her that 2 people had just checked in with her booking.
Oh,
except
boy.
she was at home.
Oh, boy.
They quickly confirmed the details of who'd checked in, and lo and behold, it turned out John had booked the room through her account, apparently thinking Beth wouldn't notice. The concierge, concerned about potential identity fraud, revealed he'd checked in with another woman, and yeah, it was clear John was cheating on her, and
Yep.
if the multiple room bookings were anything to go by, he'd been doing so for a while.
A while.
Beth was instantly heartbroken, but kept her cool on the phone. She casually lied that she had in fact made the booking and hung up. When John returned that evening, Beth was her regular affectionate self, giving away nothing of what she actually knew. Over the next few weeks, she began slowly
7
packing her
weeks?
stuff up into boxes, saying she was just doing some spring cleaning and reorganizing.
Okay.
John didn't suspect a thing and continued on with his affair none the wiser. Beth knew he was going on a business trip and spent the coming weeks securing a new apartment, renting movers, and telling all her friends what had happened, but asked them not to reveal anything to John. She also told their downstairs neighbors what John had done, and, disgusted by his behavior, they vowed to help her however they could.
We got you.
After she'd moved the last of her stuff out, she bought 25 packets of fresh prawns and proceeded to hide
Prawns?
all of them under carpets, in curtain poles, down radiator slots, and even glued them to the hot water pipes around the apartment. She then locked the door, said goodbye to the neighbors, and left. When he returned a week later, he suddenly found his keys wouldn't open the front door. The night before he'd left, Beth had secretly filed down the teeth of his keys so they wouldn't fit in the lock. When he
Wow.
asked his neighbors for the spare keys, they claimed he'd never actually left a set with them. He had, they just didn't want to help him. Confused, he tried to ring Beth, but his calls went straight to her voicemail.
All the
So,
time.
to get to his apartment, he now needed an expensive emergency locksmith. After several hours, he finally stepped into his apartment and was hit by
What is
a
that smell?
wave of week-old rotten seafood stink. He
Ooh-wee.
rang all of his friends, none of whom would pick up, and then once again desperately tried to reach Beth, calling and messaging, demanding to know what was happening. She simply messaged back, "Maybe you can get a hotel," before blocking him.
Oh,
But it didn't end
maybe
there.
get a
A few months
hotel.
later, the downstairs neighbors rang
Dang.
Beth, sounding very excited. They said since she'd moved out, John hadn't been able to afford the mortgage repayments on his own and was being forced to sell the property. She asked why he hadn't just moved his new girlfriend in, and they said they think it was because the source of the fish stink still hadn't been found. So, with no one wanting to live there with him, he was forced to sell at a pitiful asking price, losing at least £40,000.
40,000.
Man, do I love a happy ending.
Yeah, me too. Oh
Which of these stories was
my
your favorite?
God. Oh my God. That. Wow, that was like sweet poetic revenge in a way. So you're gonna cheat because she has been incredibly busy with her work, and you using her. Wow. So not only cheating on her, but identity theft too. But she got back at him good with the why don't you get a hotel? Saying you've been doing that for a while with my credit card. But that is going to be it for this part of revenge stories that went way too far. Hey, I will say this. Hope y'all enjoyed, because we're going to be diving in to the next one real soon.